Welcome to Cattle Call, an original production of the Nebraska Rural Radio Association. I'm Chad Moyer. Today's Cattle Call brought to you again by Wolf Auto, small town strong. Check out their website, wolfauto.com, and see what's available from there. Thanks for their sponsorship again here this week. Once again, it's Brad Kooima of Kooima Varilek at Sioux Center, Iowa, as we talk about the markets. Boy, do we have some things to talk about this week. A number of good questions that were submitted by our viewers and our listeners. But first of all, just a quick recap on the markets last week. Nice little pop in the cash market. We'd been looking for that for a while, and it came last week, huh, Brad?
Absolutely. Chad, thanks again for having me on. Enjoyable show. $10 in 2 weeks on cash cattle. 5 the week before, 5 last week. And the timing was remarkable. If people have forgotten what happened here last Friday, we were down the limit on feeder cattle, which is $9.25. We were down a chunk on the live cattle. And while during and after all of that was going on, you had a couple of packers step in and be willing to pay $240, which was 5 higher than a week ago. I mean, remarkable. To me, a disparity between the worry about, well, what does this mean that this administration is bent on lowering the price of beef, compared to the fact that, well, cash is king, and there's still, I don't care what they say today, there's still a shortage of fat cattle, and so you got a packer chasing the cash market. So I don't know if I've ever seen that kind of disconnect between a horrible futures day and 5 higher on cash cattle. Truly amazing.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting, too, that last week's total number was a significant number, and maybe it's just because we didn't move much in the week before. If you average the 2 weeks out, it's probably a normal couple of weeks, isn't it?
The number of negotiated trade. Yeah. Nice pickup, Chad. God, you could do research for me. Last week there was a bubble, though. You're right. And maybe as you balance that between the 2 weeks, makes a little bit of that. I would be selfish enough to use that to prove my theorem that the more cattle you negotiate, the higher the price is. In fact, I've got about 10 years worth of a study that various college interns have done for me, that it's not sophisticated enough if I'm not at a state run, and don't have the right letters behind my name, PhD. But I continue to be convinced that when you get more negotiation, you also have better prices. But the other thing on that deal, we had draw. Remember 2 weeks ago, you talked about that, but we had draw down that 15 to 30. So you kind of pulled that packer a little closer to the knife too, which I always use as a bit of an indicator. Now last week we were quite a bit higher on the 15 to 30 days. So we'll see. I think most people are expecting higher cash this week. We'll see. There's been a little bit of steady money paid here on a Wednesday. Not a lot, but just a little bit at 240. So we'll see. I think with the softer futures, that might soften that tone just a little bit, but I would have thought that last week too.
Yeah. All right. Well, and you mentioned it too. There's been some headlines since last week and even today, wondering, okay, what does this plan by the government to lower consumer beef prices? What does that look like? We still don't know a lot, maybe know a little bit more than we knew at the end of last week. And we could talk about what they want to do and just the idea of government intervention. You and I had talked about that before, whether that's a wise idea or not. But how is the market dealing with this idea of importing more beef or trying to affect the consumer price of beef right now?
Excellent question. And remind me to mention the dueling pianos of the market here sometime at the end of the thing, because I think that's important to the market. I'm a free market guy. I think less is more. However, you can't drive 80 miles an hour down the wrong side of the highway either. I mean, some of this extreme protectionist type political viewpoint is to me is a little bit unrealistic as well. I don't remember a lot of people complaining too much when they put the big tariff on Brazil, for instance, which somebody tell me what that was for. I mean, really, so they didn't like the way he treated the ex-president, and then make up some stuff of why we have an 86% tariff. I mean, I'm not saying what side I'm on here. It's just that there's so much stuff that plays into this thing. And you don't think the Mexican border doesn't have something to do with why the market's this high? Come on. It's somewhat unrealistic, but whenever the government meddles in here, it usually doesn't end up well. I mean, dairy buyouts, you know, high-priced leveraged grain in an environment where they don't do the right thing for price protection. I worry about it, but what it's creating here is this split, this duel of cash is king, and you can't make any more fat cattle, whether they open Argentina or Brazil or whatever they announced today when Rollins and Trump talked today, whenever that's going to be. That's not going to change the supply of fat cattle this week or next week or for the next several months, frankly. On the other hand, uncertainty, if you're a long speculator, and they make an awful lot of who trades futures market, let's be realistic. If you're a long speculator, do you think you're not getting a little sick of this? I mean, feeder cattle down $6, fat's down 2.5, because we might hear an announcement today. I worry that you're shifting some of the bulk of the trade here away from that long speculator. It says, let's let it settle down, then we'll see what happens. Because every day there's potential sellers. People that feed cattle are potential sellers every day. So we'll see. Now, the market, honestly, Chad, the last several times we've had these sorts of situations, like the one that comes to my memory is when they made this big splash of how Secretary Rollins was going to go to the border, and we're going to talk about the Mexican border, right? And the market crashed. Surely why would she go there if she's not going to say that we're going to open the border? And she went down there and said, we're not going to open the border. I mean, it was one of the more dumb's the word that comes to mind. One little thing, I didn't understand the whole hoopla about the whole thing. So you wonder again if you're going to have one of those big promises and unresolved, data when we come out of it. If all we hear today is some Argentina beef, Chad, I don't think that's enough to move the needle. Argentina has high quality beef. It's stuff that you and I are used to. Similar genetics. The environment's the same to where you and I live, but to their ability to sell enough of it to move the needle, I don't think most analysts think they are. Now, the other part of that, though, is the girl in the room is they did say other countries in that yesterday. You suppose it's Brazil, and nothing's being talked about at the border yet. And I don't think, I'd be shocked if there was anything that was talked about with the border today either. But it's the girl in the room. At some point, when are we going to hear that news? So that's what's got the long speculator, I'm sure, nervous today.
All right. We had some really good comments that were submitted by viewers and listeners this week. Let's try and tackle one of them. And this one has to do with, what at what level does the packer own livestock, and is that enough to and kind of the structure, the pricing structure? How are they guaranteed? How does that play out? So, first of all, to that question, what percent of the cattle does the packer own, and is that being delivered against a guaranteed price? How does this all work, or how is it working right now?
Lucky we have an hour. I could talk about this for hours and have. I stood alongside Senator Grassley to talk about 5014 a number of years ago. That got got somewhat dumbed down to a different level, but I think it's a big issue. It got lost now with the big markets. People forgot. Everybody's happy. If you asked what the packer owns, you would get a difficult answer, because the packer's going to say, well, I don't own any, and yet it's the real question here, Chad, is how much captive supply, how much of that supply of the overall supply do you really have control over? In other words, how much do you not have to go out and competitively compete with another packer to secure? Now, most of that, when you look at those buckets of formula cattle, contract cattle, negotiated cattle, grid cattle, they'll tell, someone would say to you, well, it looks like it's around 80 to 85% would be captive, what I would just dump into the captive supply cattle. I would suggest it's much more than that, because they've allowed this so-called negotiated grid cattle to be part of the bucket that is negotiated cattle. So when I price a pen of cattle and call the four major packers in Greater Omaha, and et cetera, and those that's negotiation. If I try to get a grid bid, there's probably only one person that's going to give me a grid bid, and he's going to say, take it or leave it. Mm-hmm. And so Friday, you take it, right? I mean, what that has nothing to do, in my opinion, with the definition of negotiation. So if you throw that grid thing in there, I'll bet you're closer to maybe only in the South, It's probably in Texas. It's probably, if you throw out the grid stuff, it's probably less than 5% in Texas. If you throw out the grid in Kansas, it's probably around 10% that actually get negotiated for. So when you skew that, now right now the numbers are tight, and the Packers, he's in trouble. He's screwed, right? But if you had, once we have one too many again, then it's the formula guys get taken care of first. So I and then the cost plus is a whole nother deal, where I'll give you $100 more if you just give me all your cattle. Those really irritate me. And I wonder if that's going to be the next big thing for a packer, after chasing the market like he did all year. Why wouldn't he go to his relationship? That's the word they like to use. These feedlots that they have a relationship cattle with, where the relationship is that you guarantee that you get all my cattle, and I'll give you whatever the market is plus $50 a head, plus $100 a head, plus $3 a hundred, whatever. There's all kinds of varying degrees of those. So it's in my estimation, it's kind of the unspoken, a little bit nasty side of the cattle business, but it's certainly a big part of the business.
Yep. All right. One other one that I'd like to try and get an answer from you on too, and that is if you think back to the last time the cattle cycle kind of swung as low as it is now, there was discussion, there was worry about these processors closing. Where we are with the market now, is there a danger of that? Or is there discussion of us losing some processing capacity because of the situation?
It's a great question. And it's one that I've been worried about, I think. The irony of it is right when we went into this biggest shortage, we had all these expansion plants to go on, one in your state, one in Texas, the one in Council Bluffs kind of got backburnered for now, push the pause button. So that was very ironic. Now, I've got some small packer guys, friends of mine, and I believe them. They tell me I'm going to lose $250, $300 a head this week again on everything I buy. That's not sustainable. I think it's actually worse for the big four, frankly, because they sell a lot of, they buy a lot of formula cattle, as to your last question, but they also sell a lot of formula beef. Some people sell cattle like to like a Texas Roadhouse or a chain thing like that. They'll buy 6 months worth of beef, right? Well, if you're tied to that deal and now you're paying this much for live cattle, think what a nightmare that is, so, but to try to answer the question, my guess would be the big guys will try to weather it with the idea that their long view is to, well, somebody small is going to have to go. We're going to be able to sustain this longer than they are. And then when it does get good again, in other words, when we have a few more cattle again, then they'll be able to make that back up. I hope it's not one of our regionals. To me, they're the most important component of our market in our area. I'm not hearing that anything is on the cusp of it, not unless it's a really small one. Hopefully we don't have to talk about that.
Yep. All right. Well, we're a little long in the tooth on this program, so we better talk about what are our thoughts for cash here this week. Feelings. 2 weeks of some nice up moves. What are you thinking? Unless there's a bomb drop between now and the end of the week. But what are you thinking? What does it feel like for cash cattle this week?
Fair enough. Sorry, I was verbose, I believe is my daughter's word she uses for me. I would think a little bit higher, steady at worst. Basis levels up here. I mean, even if even with the sharply lower day here, October cattle around 242, I would think the basis traders would think they should at least get 240 steady-ish. And the fact that you're getting a little bit of it on a Wednesday already is a good sign. I'm going to say 1 to 2 higher. And maybe the South being premium in the North, which would make sense to me too. But we'll see. But you're right. If there is some sort of a real hostile type of a press conference today, then that might change that.
Sure. All right. As always, we look forward to having conversations. Contact information for folks that'd like to reach out.
Call us, 712-722-0023. kkvtrading.com is where you can look at us up to.
All right. We've had a lot of good comments, and thank you for submitting all of those good comments as well and questions. We have some that we'll put in our back pocket and hold for future programs as well. In the meantime, put your thoughts and comments and questions in the comment section below, and make sure you hit that subscribe button. That'll let you know when we have another cattle call available for you to view and to listen to. Thanks again, Brad. Appreciate it. Brad Kooima and Varilek at Sioux Center, Iowa. And thank you for listening and watching to, again, this week's cattle call, brought to you by Wolf Auto, small town strong. Have a great week. We'll see you on next week's cattle call.